What's going on, RCBL fans? This is Dean Barker with the Rocktown Rundown.
I'm Ross Barker.
And we have a very special guest today, RCBL Player of the Week and Reds pitcher and shortstop, Chris Huffman. Chris, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Unfortunately, our other podcaster, Tyler Carney, couldn't be here today, but we have a few questions we're going to ask from him. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start by looking at the league standings at this point. We're recording on Tuesday because we were all out of town this past weekend. So coming in first place, we got the Bridgewater Reds at 8-2. Second place, we got Clover Hill Bucks 7-2. Third place, Broadway Bruins at 4-2. We got the RCBL Shockers at 3-3. Although I would say that's probably 4-3 because there's problems with point streak. Then you've got in fifth place, Montezuma Braves 4-5. Grottoes Cardinals 4-5. Seventh place, we got the Storch Draft Diamondbacks at 3-6, and rounding it out, we've got the Elkton Blue Sox at 0-10. All right. So let's talk about what we covered this last week. We won't talk about last night because we can talk about it a little bit, but let's start by. Let's see, who did we cover last week?
I covered the Clover Hill versus the Bridgewater game.
Okay, what did you see there?
So it was a very intense game. I thought both teams played very well. Obviously, I think
Battle of the top two.
there was a battle of the top two, and it was a rivalry battle. And I think these guys had something to prove after they had just lost the previous week.
Yeah.
At that same field, after the big interview.
Yeah, that interview. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if Coach Scherfy can live down part one of that interview, because he did predict they're going to defend the title, and everything I've seen so far confirms
they're in first place right now.
Yeah, Clover Hill. I mean, Clover Hill's playing solid. I mean, both of their two losses have been in competitive ball games. So I look forward to see. I think it's going to be a race between those two teams. But let's not forget about the Broadway Bruins. This Broadway team is playing really scrappy baseball. Bryce Strouderman, I think, he's doing a heck of a job in his first year as the head coach with this team. I think we're going to have a very serious chance of seeing him as Coach of the Year this year. And we've seen them play twice. We saw them when Keenan took on the Diamondbacks. That team looked pretty solid. He was in high school and he shut all those guys down. That was very impressive. I look forward to seeing more out of him. I believe somebody will be covering that game tomorrow for the league.
Yes. Carl Keenan, very, very talented young man. He's going to be going to Shenandoah this fall, so he's going to be playing baseball with another very talented group of young men. I'm really curious to see how that's going to. I think he's going to fit right in with that Shenandoah team.
Another team that we saw was the Newmarket Shockers didn't get off to the best start this year. I think they were either 1-3 or 0-3 to start it off, and they're right around 500 right now. They defeated a very good Grottoes team. We saw that game on Sunday night, and it was a complete game out of, I forget what his name, out of their pitcher. We were talking to his mom during the game. But this Newmarket Shockers team, Coach Potts, I mean, he came in late, but this team they've won most of their last few games. I think all but one. Who else? Grottoes on the other side of that. They looked pretty good to start the season. I think they had a little bit of a rough week. They lost a few games. I think they lost one to you guys?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think it was pretty close, though.
So, obviously, this isn't the time to hit the panic button, but I do think Tim Nicely needs to give his guys a little bit of a wake-up call and see what's going on moving forward. Let's see, Storch Draft, I believe, has won their won 2 of their last 3, if I remember correctly.
They beat us. Yeah, they beat us earlier in the week, I think.
Okay, yeah, that was that the Sunday night game?
It was Saturday, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the score of that game?
I think it was like 15-5.
Okay, so Storch Draft is trying to make a comeback, it looks like. That's impressive. We were talking about on the podcast last time was they were going to play Elkton, and it was going to be the battle of the 2 last place teams, and everybody's saying if they lose this game, you got to hit the panic button if you're Storch Draft. They came out and beat them in 7 innings. You weren't at that game. I was scheduled to cover another game, but I moved to it because I thought, well, is this going to be Elkton's first win? And Storch Draft came out and said, you know what? No, we are not. We might not be in second place right now, like we were last year, but we are going to get back into that conversation. Who else? Yeah, Elkton. You saw them play Grottos. What did you think?
I saw Elkton got off to a very good start in the game, but Grottos, they just took over.
They really tried to mount that comeback.
But
I was getting the text
Elkton had a very very strong, I think it was 6th inning, where they scored 6 runs. And they made it a very close game against a very good Grottos team. So the potential is definitely there.
They've got, as I always say about Grottos, they don't get a whole lot of runners on base, but when they get them on base, they bring them in. So that's what you got to watch out for if you're one of these pitchers. Don't think, oh, just because they're last place, they don't have anything good about them. I think Elkton's first win is probably going to be a game where they perform offensively. It's going to have to be because they're pitching. I mean, they didn't do too bad against you guys, I wouldn't say.
Yeah, I thought both pitchers threw really well. They pounded the zone, got ahead of us, and I think we hit the ball well that game, but it was just kind of spread out. It wasn't like back to back to back to back. It was like spread out through the game, which I think limits runs throughout the game. Definitely helps out with that. But
didn't one of their guys hit a home run off a Shiflett?
I think so, yeah.
I was pretty surprised to see that.
I think it was right after the inning before Shiflett hit one out, and then I guess he gave up one the next inning. But
not many hitters have done that off of Shiflett.
Right.
So I was impressed to see that. I think that's going to be the key. Is their offense is there. They got to work on pitching. I think, and Coach Sutton says he's still waiting on guys to get back. I think at this point, as you were talking about before the show, it's going to be a matter of who gets hot at the end of the season. So I think just because if Elkton can string together a couple of wins down the road, I mean, they're not going to win the regular season title at this point, if we're being honest. But I think if they can start to win a few games, who knows, they might be able to win a playoff series. Well, we didn't bring this guy onto the show to talk about the other teams. Let's talk about the Bridgewater Reds.
Yeah.
Last night's game will probably go down in the record books of the biggest what if in the history of the game. So this game, for those of you who weren't watching on Point Streak, what happened was Bridgewater went through their lineup twice in the first 2 innings. And they scored 8. I think we're ahead 8-0. Montezuma made a little bit of a comeback, cut it to 4, and then you put another run on. I was thinking, my goodness, I'm gonna get out of here early. This article's gonna get done within a relatively decent time, and I'm gonna get to go to bed. And then Montezuma almost completed the greatest comeback in the history of the RCBL. What happened?
Yeah, I think that says a lot about them as a team.
That's the team we didn't talk about. Montezuma, all their games, I believe, have been competitive, even their losses.
And I think it's just a testament to this league in general where, it's not over till the last out's made. And being on the other end of that, you can kind of see, like, your team kind of starting to coast and saying, oh, this is going to be pretty. I mean, the more runs you get up, the easier you think it's going to be. But
Shiflett had a perfect game into this third inning, I believe.
I think so. Yeah, he was doing really well. But yeah, it's just. I think it's a matter of keeping your foot on the gas and not letting up. But like I said, I think any team can beat any team.
What was it feeling like in that ninth inning? I mean, you were up 7 runs in that inning. It looked like, okay, we just need a few outs, and then you didn't get any outs, and then the runs started to come in, and then you needed a pitching change.
Right.
I mean, after giving up all those runs, what was going through your mind is like, oh my goodness, we're gonna lose. Like, what is going through? What's being said in the dugout? What's going on there?
I think the biggest thing is, just stop the bleeding somehow. My pitching coach I had in pro ball, when I was coming in relief, bases loaded, nobody out, he would always ask me, what's the best way to get out of a jam? And he would always say, start getting outs. So it's just a matter of, making routine plays and just getting outs instead of worrying about, the overall result of are we going to win this game or are we going to lose this game? Just focusing on that one pitch, one out.
Yeah, you can only get one out at a time.
Right.
And you can only get one strike at a time. So that's the key, just throw strikes, kid.
Yeah.
So after you go into extras, I think one thing that I really noticed that stuck out to me was, I think with 1 out in the top of the 10th, with 2 strikes, Derek Shiflett threw, looked like a pretty good pitch that was called a ball, and he said to the umpire, like, that was right over the plate. A lot of guys could have just went ballistic at that point and said, you took away third strike, and which was going to be his 10th strikeout.
Right.
But instead of whining and complaining too much, he just recuperated and got the third strike. Whereas that could have been a turning point in the game.
Exactly.
I think that says a lot about. I mean, Shiflett, I have seen him be a little bit of a fiery redhead over the years, but I do think, he's been in this league a long time and he's had a lot of success for a reason.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Kind of going back to playing in college, we had this thing where we had a mental strength coach come in, and it would always be, the last pitch doesn't matter. It's about this pitch. This next pitch, you take it one pitch at a time. If it's a bad call, so what? Move on to the next pitch. Control the things you can control, and I think he does a great job of doing that. Not letting it get to him too much. And
we talked about Coach Strauderman, who is, I think he's only 25, 26?
Yeah, I think he's pretty young.
He's a very young head coach, and he's taking a very strong hold of this Bruins team. I think the only competition he would have, we've got a lot of good coaches, but just because he's a good coach doesn't mean we'll get Coach of the Year. I think a strong competition he might have to compete with is Coach Dennis Miller, who's taken this team over, this Bridgewater team, as an interim head coach while Sherfy's out NASCARing it up. He's held the fort down pretty strongly, it looks like.
Yeah, he's been there for, as long as I've been there. Probably, years and years before I've been there. So I think he knows how Sherfy likes his team ran, and I think he does a great job of, keeping everybody together and keeping us, focused on the task at hand.
I always like interviewing him because it's so clear when you talk to him that he's not used to being in this situation.
Yeah.
Well, let's see, what questions do we have? Well, you know what we need to start doing? We need to start taking questions from the audience. From our RCBL fans.
That'd be a good idea.
Well, Chris Huffman, what year did you graduate from JMU?
I didn't graduate. I got drafted my junior year.
Well, let's hear a little bit about your life baseball story. Where did it get started for you?
I got started in New Hope, Virginia. I'm about 5 or 6 years old, playing t-ball. It's a town right beside Fort Defiance. I graduated from Ford 2011. Played at JMU for 3 years. Was lucky enough to get drafted, and played minor leagues for about 6 years until COVID happened. Kind of put a hold on everything there.
I think, well, I mean, a lot of people could look at that and say, well, you didn't make it to the major leagues. But when you take a step and look back, they're very, I mean, we were talking, we grew up in Williamsburg, huge William and Mary fans. We've known a lot of guys who have been drafted, and the guys who make it to the major leagues are very, very few.
Right.
So I think getting drafted and being a professional baseball player, even if it's just for a few years, is like, I mean, I remember from my playing days, obviously I didn't have anywhere near that success, but just, you'll always look back and have the things that you regret in your head, but to the rest of us, it just looks like we've got a minor leaguer on the show.
Right, yeah.
So, I mean, what was the biggest takeaway you had from your time in the minor leagues?
I think it's a long season, and that's just how baseball is in general. I think we play like almost a second college season after the guys finish their college seasons up, or it's somewhere close to that. Our biggest thing was, at least for me, was, you know, you're going to have bad days, you're going to have good days. Don't get too high or too low. You just got to stay even throughout the whole year. And when stuff does start not going your way, instead of dwelling in it, you gotta kind of assess the situation, learn from it, and say, you know, what was I doing back here that was making me successful? What am I doing different here that's, you know, making me struggle a little bit? So,
what was your favorite part of being a professional baseball player?
I'd probably say just like the amount of people that I met, the amount of great coaches I had, amount of so I had so many good teammates too, and just that competitiveness to it. It's very similar to this league, I think. I don't think it matters where you play. It's everybody wants to win, so you're gonna get everybody's best shot. And but yeah, I think just everybody playing for one single goal in mind.
You had a favorite memory?
So I tell this to a lot of people when they ask if I ever got like a big leaguer out or anything. So we had, I was in Lake Elsinore, and Howie Kendrick was down with the Dodgers at the time on a rehab assignment. I faced him 2 times. First time I struck him out. The second time he grounded out to third base. And I told my family and everything, they obviously kept up with the game and stuff, and my granddad was like, that guy was worth $8 million and he just struck him out. That was probably one of the best ones, and then playing in the playoffs in AAA, that was an awesome experience too, just the amount of fans that show up to those games. And
Now, was this with the Padres?
yeah, it was in El Paso, Texas.
Awesome. So last year you had, you had been in the RCBL before, but last year I think was really unless you played in college too, this would have been like your first long-term season. What was the adjustment like? And I think Tyler actually asked something similar to this. Was like, what was it like making that adjustment from playing against professionals and then coming back down to playing high school and college guys?
I think it's something that,
and veterans like yourself.
right. I try to just always give my best. It doesn't matter who you're playing. Anybody can beat you any day. I was always taught to respect your opponent. Don't play down to their level. Play the best game you can play.
Right.
And I think it just helps me stay focused and not get lazy like in the off season or in between starts with my routine and everything like that.
So going back to the fact that you just won the RCBL Player of the Week, what do you think has been the key to your success along with the team's success this year?
I look like you might make you very well might win the title again this year.
Right. I'd say it starts before the season. In my opinion, the season's supposed to be fun. You're playing games, having fun. It's a lot more fun when you win games, but I think it comes in that preparation in the off season, hitting the weight room, keeping up with throwing, hitting batting practice, seeing live ABs. I think all of that collectively just gives you that extra step, because you have guys that they just finished a college season,
right?
So they're kind of like in mid-season form right now, and just the way I think about it, I don't want to come out taking 4 or 5 starts to get loose or ready for the season. I want to be ready to go like day one,
right?
And I think preparation is a big thing for that.
Okay. So this past year, you had the honor of being RCBL championship. Are we good? Okay. Man, I thought the thing shut off for a second. Like, we're gonna have to do this whole show over again. So a big honor for you was being RCBL championship MVP. You had a very huge role to play in the finals. I believe you were the winning pitcher in Game 7, if I remember correctly.
Right.
What was the key for you guys to go ahead and do that, and how did it feel to win it all?
I've been a part of a few championship teams, but I've never been a part of one where it's been taken to the very last game of every playoff series, and it's just like all or nothing, like win or go home. And that's for those for like 3 series last year, and so I think it's definitely special, something I'll definitely remember for the rest of my life. But just the will of the whole team in general, of not giving up, not getting down, and
that was a 7-game series.
Yeah, and it was back and forth too. It was, well, they might pull it off, and then here we come, and then here they come right back. It was definitely a lot of ups and downs, but like I said, you gotta stay even keeled through the whole thing.
So I'm sure, as I said earlier, all the guys who see you and know that you were in the minor leagues, a lot of guys probably look up to you in this league, especially the high school guys that you're playing with. This is a question from Tyler. What would your advice be to those guys who are hoping to go pro?
It's going to take hard work. Practice. Don't ever be too big for the games. It can humble you just like that. Always try to learn something from somebody. I don't care if they're a 60-year-old person or if they're a 10-year-old person. Like, try to learn something from that person. I helped coach Fort this year, and Sam Garber was one of our pitchers on the team.
Yeah.
He plays for us, but I think he broke his hand, so he's out for a couple of weeks. But I saw his slider throughout the year, and I was like, I never had a good slider, so I would go up to him and talk to him about it, and he showed me how he holds it, and now that's how I hold my slider. And I think that's been one of my better put out pitches this year. And so I think it's just, constantly learning from everybody around you, just having an open mind.
And then this last question from Tyler. Biggest thing you learned and still apply today from your time in the pros?
I'd probably say just hard work and dedication. I know I keep going back to that a little bit, but there's a reason they get paid to do what they do, and they handle their work on the field and off the field. They take care of the little things, and they don't let small details slip by. So I think paying attention to detail, whether it's at my daily job or whether it's on the baseball field, I try to almost kind of micromanage it, but paying attention to those small details.
Okay. You got anything else?
So what do you think is going to be the key to your success continuing, like moving forward in the rest of the season, and as your success as a player, but also your success as a team, and maybe defending the title?
So I think we're hitting well, we're pitching well. The thing I think we need to work on the most, some of my teammates may disagree, but I think it's the errors. Sometimes we do tend to get a little sloppy on defense.
4 of those runs yesterday were unearned.
Right, yeah.
Those runs don't come across, they don't make that comeback.
Exactly. Just sharpening that up, and because good defense wins championships, and that's what they always say, I guess. But
Let's see, what else do we have? Well, we talked about Broadway. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when these two teams compete, because 2020, you said you didn't play too many games with that team, but back in 2020 it was Bridgewater versus Broadway to go to the final.
mm-hmm.
And Broadway was victorious, and Broadway ended up winning it all. This Broadway team, I think Strouderman has this team under control. They had a little bit of a rough night last night against the Shockers, but as I said, this Shockers team, Nolan Potts took his team pretty far. When he was the head coach at Heritage this year, they had a decent postseason run. So I think they'll be fine. The Bruins will be fine. What do you think is going to be the key to holding those guys off? And it's at Broadway, right?
Yeah, it's at Broadway.
Ooh, okay.
I think just keeping doing what we're doing. With me pitching, I feel like I have a little bit more control of certain situations in the game, but just keeping them off balance, hitting my spots. I always I would tell people, all throughout high school and college, my coaches called my pitches, so whenever I got to pro ball, I didn't know how to call my own game or anything like that, so it's something
Now, are you pitching tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's something I had to learn, my first few years of pro ball. But I think, just keeping my sequencing up and, just keeping them off balance.
So that'll be a fun game to cover. We'll see. I don't know which game Tyler's covering. I might see if I can snag that game. I'm scheduled to cover Grottos versus Stuart Strap, which would also be interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see. Who do we have coming up this week? We've got those two games. Friday, I'm covering, Blue Sox at the Bucks. It'll be interesting to see if Elton can get their first win against Clover Hill. That will be a big statement. That everything we're saying about this team's offense is true, because they scored 8 runs against Clover Hill.
Against Grottos.
No, Elton scored 8 runs against Clover Hill.
Oh, they scored against them too?
Okay. Yeah, but they gave up 19. So if they can hunker down on pitching, which is going to be hard to do against a very hard-hitting Clover Hill team, but if their bats are there, I think they might be able to get their first win. And then on Saturday, I've got a doubleheader between the Bucks and the Bruins. And then there's also a doubleheader that day, I believe. I don't know, but let's see. Tomorrow, we got the Blue Sox at the Shockers. We'll be interested to see if Newmarket's able to hold them off tomorrow. They just had a pretty decent game against Broadway. We'll see if they're not tired, because that's going to be the Shockers' first home game. Yeah. So this team, the Shockers have been playing in Newmarket for the longest time, and then now they're moving to Spotswood. We don't know how long that's going to last, but I was talking to Coach Posse. He's like, man, we had to get all new uniforms and everything.
Yeah.
I called him Newmarket in the interview
Yeah.
I gave.
I still
Yeah,
say
you
it,
called
too.
them. You called them Newmarket a few times on this live stream already.
Did I?
Yep.
All right, then. So let's see. Any predictions for
Who's Newmarket playing again?
you did it now.
I mean, the RCB, the Shockers. Who are they playing?
The Washington football team, they're playing against the Blue Sox tomorrow, and then they'll be playing against. What was it?
I think
I don't know.
Elkton. They'll see that this will definitely be an interesting game. If this isn't Elkton's first win, it'll with a team like the Shockers, it'll definitely give them a learning experience. Like
Yeah.
because it's definitely a test. But yeah, I think they're gonna go into this game. I think they'll at least get a few runs because they'll be motivated in this game because they know they got to bring their A game if they want to get this win against a very, very good Shockers team.
Coaching's going to be interesting because we've talked to Sutton quite a few times. The guy knows baseball.
Yeah.
Tyler's talked to him more than I have, but I mean, after we gave that interview with him, like, when they played these guys in that doubleheader, I mean, we talked for him for like an extra 5 minutes. The guy knows his stuff. So we'll be interested to see what's going on there. I'll be covering the Bucks versus Bruins doubleheader. That's probably just going to be persist. Who has, as Coach Starterman said, who has the resilience there? Because it's going to be long. It's going to be two very solid teams. They might split it. But I think the team that's I've seen in double headers. I mean, it's easy if you lose the first game to just get down and say, well, crap, and then just lose the second one. I think, but my high school coach, John Corbin, once told me 1-1 looks way better than 0-2. So if whoever loses that first game, if they can bounce back, I mean, that's going to be key to see, like, we know Clover Hill's a mature team. Broadway's decent, but this is going to be the test to see, we can't rule anybody out at this point in the year, but it'll be a test to see, is this team for real? Well, we didn't get to do it last week because we didn't have any players on the show and we didn't have much time, but we're going to see, speaking of tests, we're going to see Chris Huffman. Beat the 30-second shot clock.
How many did Derek get?
4.
4, okay. He's better at basketball than me, so.
So
Okay,
we're going to make
in
sure. This guy's
Yeah, it's in the frame.
All right, is he in the frame?
Let's see this. Yep, he's in the frame.
All right, I'm going to set a timer on.
And I'll rebound.
Alright. Free throws were not my thing either.
All right, you got the ball.
3, 2, 1, go. 1, 2.
The number to beat is 4, by the way.
4?
Yep. We haven't decided on a prize yet. 3, 4.
Tie it for the.
Oh. 10.
Oh,
8,
man.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 5, 1, 0. I counted 7.
Yeah, that's 7. I think.
All right,
that's
well,
6 or
Derek,
7.
you've been beat.
Sorry, buddy.
Chris Huffman, 7. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
We'll see
Thanks
you all
for
next
having
time.
me. I had to